Before we begin to learn how to do flowcharting, in the last video I mentioned that flowcharting and pseudocode go together. They're both designs. They're not aimed at any one specific language but at all languages, and I've reproduced this 5F pseudocode for you on your page in computing here. And what this says, and what I want to point out, is that learners are not expected to memorize the syntax of this pseudocode, so that the exam board's version, you could use a different kind, but when asked, may provide answers in any style of pseudocode they choose, providing its meaning could be reasonably inferred by a competent programmer. So you're free to sort of choose your own as long as you're consistent with what you do. So a flowchart is good for pseudocode. The pseudocode taught by the exam board is good for pseudocode. And I've got many different forms of pseudocode that I personally use, which I probably will not introduce to you. I will stay within what the specification requires. So nipping over to another part of the specification, this is why you're learning flowcharting and pseudocode, is that you can perform the design for your project. And you will spend, let's say the project is 20 hours long, I wouldn't be surprised to see you spending up to, if not even more than 10 hours just designing the program. Actually coding it and testing it is not going to be the largest part, or shouldn't be the largest part. You should be able to write it without even touching a computer and be able to sort of test it without running it in any particular programming language. I've also reproduced this for you. The fact that you must use a suitable high-level text-based programming language such as Python, the C family of languages, Java, JavaScript, Visual Basic, PHP, Delphi and Basic. I've reproduced that on your page for you. These are the different languages that schools up and down the country could choose to use. We, with the majority of schools, have chosen Python. However, I'm going to show you other languages. I'm going to show you Java, maybe JavaScript, PHP, Delphi, Basic and Visual Basic, .NET. I'm not going to show you because we don't have the license to run that software, and it's rather large and rather costly, and that also sort of works in with the C family of languages, C#, C++. They can be expensive if we use the Visual Basic. It's actually called .NET framework. If we use their framework from Microsoft, can be very costly, and other versions of it can be rather confusing. So I'm going to stay away from Visual Basic and the C family of languages, and also stay away from Basic. However, at some point I may produce them for you. The rest of the languages I will show you so that you can get an understanding of how they're used, and the fact that things as simple as a variable in Python is vastly different to a variable in Java and how it's laid out. And the same for printing. So if you want to print something in Python versus printing something in Java, or printing something in PHP, or even Delphi, that's going to be interesting because that's more than a text-based language. That's an event-driven language, which we will see, and you might want to get into that at some later stage, but it's different. And the whole point of the design is that you can design something and not really think about which language you're programming it for. So before we go any further, what I would like you to do again is look at this flowchart. This is where we're going to begin with flowcharts and the symbols that I mentioned in the last lesson. But I've given you a link for something called Lucid Charts. You may have to make yourself a member by putting in an email address or a Gmail account, whichever. You should be able to get a free account. The free account is a little bit limited. You can only create so many or do so many things, but it's good enough for what our needs are. And at the top here, documents, I've got Lucid Charts, and I will take you through Lucid Charts and how it works when you're ready to sort of start producing your own charts. The thing is, you don't need to use this. This is going to be a good teaching tool and you may wish to stay with it. But on-screen flowcharting can be very limited. Sometimes I will go over and actually do it on paper. The same with pseudocode. I'll probably write my pseudocode on paper rather than try to do it in a Word document or PowerPoint, something that's going to take me 10 times as long just to format the page up to get it the way I want. I'm just going to write it out on a piece of paper. It's much simpler, and I suggest you do the same thing. By all means, learn how to use Lucid charts with flowcharts, but in reality, when it comes to your project, do it on paper, scan the results in, and use an image to represent your charts rather than play around with Lucid charts. It's going to save you an awful lot of time. So let's begin with flowcharts.